My name's Niall Plevin-Kelly. I have lived in Wrexham for around about 10, 11 years. Prior to that, I've lived various places in the UK. I'm originally from Leicester, son of immigrant parents. My father was an Irish doctor. Um, I have decided to stand for UKIP because I, like everybody else, was completely disenfranchised with politics and had no interest in it and was basically just coasting along as a lot of people are. And then I just suddenly copped up with this guy called Nigel Farage, and he came to my attention. I started listening to him, and I thought, this guy's talking sense. And I started delving into it, and I got more and more involved. And then a friend of mine, who is actually now the UKIP Delin candidate, Nigel Williams, suggested to me that I might like to get a bit more involved. To cut a long story short, that's why I'm sitting in front of you now. I firmly believe that Wrexham has an awful lot to offer, and I believe that the people of Wrexham would like to get involved in promoting Wrexham and putting it back on the map. It seems to have slipped off slightly. Everything is very South Wales orientated. I'd like to put North Wales back where it belongs. North is up on top. I think there are two big local issues at the minute. Number one, the new prison on the industrial estate. Now, the fact that it's going to go ahead, I think, is inevitable. Foundations and digging and whatever are already started. I think the way to move forward to this, on the positive side, it's going to imply employment in Wrexham. It will employ a lot of people, not only during the constructing, but in the ongoing running of it. And I believe there has been some commitment to employ local labour to a percentage. The negative side of it, it is going to have an impact on the people of Pentremila and surrounding. I think we need to work very closely with the developers and the builders, etc., and then afterwards with the Home Office to try and minimise the impact on the people of Pentremila and in fact to turn it into a positive thing. It's easy to get misconceptions about things like prisons, that if you stick one on your doorstep there's going to be an axe murderer in every bush. This is obviously not the case. From what I've read, it's going to be a Category A security prison, but they're only going to house Category C prisoners in there, so there's going to be nobody particularly nasty or seriously dangerous in there. But we need to minimise the impact and look at and emphasise the positive sides of it. The other issue at the minute locally is obviously shale gas extraction. There's been an awful lot of press about this. My personal view is that, and also the view of UKIP, is that given the right safeguards and a lot more research, we would be very foolish to ignore shale gas resources. We currently import a large percentage of our energy already. Over the next 10 years, the UK's energy needs are going to multiply by about 10 to 15%. We're going to run out. It's quite simple. The alternatives, we import an awful lot more, and that's great. At the minute we get a lot of our gas from Russia via the Ukraine. One day Mr. Yeltsin is going to turn around and say, if we don't like Britain today, the button goes down, we run out of gas, the lights go out. I don't want to see Britain in that situation. I think that once enough research has been done that the efficient and necessary safeguards can be put in place, then it's something we need to explore. And also UKIP would impose a levy on people extracting shale gas to feed back into the local community. It's Prices have gone down in energy. We're enjoying fuel prices that we've never seen at the minute. That's largely down to A, a drop in demand, but also B, the amount of shale gas energy that the US are producing. They are taking it out in the billions and billions and billions of barrels. We'd be naive and a bit ignorant to completely ignore it and rule it out. Right, we need to reintroduce businesses into the centre of Wrexham. This isn't unique to Wrexham, this is pandemic across the entire UK. Some people would blame it on out-of-town supermarkets, etc. I think to a certain degree they are responsible, but also business rates are crippling small businesses. I had a gentleman come up to me on one of our weekend campaigning stands, and he was complaining because he's recently opened a small business in Wrexham. He's only a young man, probably in his mid-20s. He's opened a small shop in Wrexham, and the business rates are absolutely crippling him. So that is something I think we need to sort out with Wrexham Wrexham Town Council. Maybe there can be some way forward whereby we can work in partnership with them to to sort of produce some leeway on the rating systems to let businesses start up. And fine, once they've started, if they're generating the income, then we can look at increasing the rates or whatever. There needs to be some sort of start-up initiative to regenerate the town centre. We also need to have a look at the infrastructure surrounding Wrexham. If you want to get people here, they've got to be able to get here. That means sorting out a decent bus service. The train service from Chester to Wrexham is not exactly fantastic, and also the ongoing nightmare of the A483. I personally suffer with that about 2 or 3 times a week, and when it's taking you an hour and a half to cover 3 miles, it's, I know work is being done. It doesn't seem at the minute to be producing the goods, but the potential is there. Wrexham has a nice town centre. It's well laid out. It's clean planned. It's there to be exploited. We need to bring business back in, as I say, sort out the rates, encourage new starts to come in and take it forward from there. No, I don't. People want to change. Everywhere I go, people are coming up to me saying, we're fed up with the established parties. We want a change. We want a choice. We want people that talk common sense. Ian Lucas's majority in the last election was only 3,654, I think, if memory serves me correctly. It's not a massive amount. It was 20-odd% of the electorate, but then again there was only a turnout of about 60% of the entire population of Wrexham, the voting population that is. So no, I don't see it as a problem at all. People need to be re-engaged. There are an awful lot of people who are completely disenfranchised with politics in total. They need to be re-engaged. And if that can be done, then no majority is too high. Right, as Europe, I'll work through them in order if I may. How the Welsh, or how Wrexham sits inside Europe, it's designated, I think it's Area 21. They don't even give it a name, less alone attach any importance to it whatsoever. That was shown by the fact that we've just elected a Welsh MEP for North Wales, Nathan Gill. He got in massively. The incumbent Labour guys were just decimated by the vote in the European elections. Europe suffer their own, or are following their own agenda. They will dress it up in all sorts of honey-covered razor blades, but they are following their own agenda, and Wrexham is no more important to them than anywhere else. In terms of Westminster, again, to a similar degree, I think it's the same thing. They really need to be made to wake up and smell the coffee and realise that life doesn't stop at the M25, which I think is how they are a little bit at the minute. Everything is very London-centric. And in corollary with that, I think Cardiff and the Senate and the Welsh Assembly are exactly the same. There is an expression, it's pennies for North Wales, pounds for South Wales. They don't seem very interested in what's going on any further north than Merthyr Tydfil, and I intend to do an awful lot about that. If anybody's going to jump up and down and wave Wrexham's flag, it will be me. That's a tough one. Probably the issue with shale gas. UKIP are very pro shale gas. It's a yes, we're going to do it, we're going to look into it with respect to, as long as there are adequate safeguards. I think personally, and it is my personal opinion, what we need to do is take a step back from it. Excuse me, sorry. Take a step back, do a lot more research. There's an awful lot of panic and scaremongering going on about shale gas extraction. There were video clips on YouTube of guys setting fire to gas coming out of taps, etc. That was actually later proved to be a fake, apparently. I'm not an expert on the subject. The minor earthquakes that were recorded in Blackpool after experimental drilling, these were apparently so small that they didn't do any damage at all, and they were only detectable by seismology, etc. We can't ignore it. We can't afford to ignore it, but we really need to go into the ins and outs of it and find out exactly what is involved, the cost involved, and most importantly, the environmental impact. And particularly in Wrexham, and it is a unique thing to Wrexham, the site that was proposed in Boris is directly over the remnants of what used to be the Gresford Colliery. This is obviously an extremely sensitive issue with the people of Wrexham, and for good reason. 200 odd dead down there. It's not something you want to be going shoving a drill bit through without due consideration to the sensitivities of the people whose families may have been involved in that. You've got to think about what the people think, but we can't just ignore it. I personally have a vendetta against people using their mobile phones when they drive. This is something I see on a daily basis. I do a lot of mileage for my work. I'm still in full-time employment at the minute. I'm finishing next weekend to start full-time campaigning. Well, to step up my campaigning. Every single day I see people driving using their mobile phones. If they're not actually physically making a call, they're on the wheel. You can tell them a mile away they've got their head down, they're texting. This is ridiculously dangerous. At the minute I think it carries a statutory fine of about £90 and 3 penalty points. Personally, I would take that up to £1,000 and 6 penalty points. Then people might start paying attention to it. Because everybody at the minute, and I must admit to a certain degree I have been guilty of it in the past. Before I invested in the hands-free technology, occasionally I would use my mobile phone. I now realise that it's ridiculous. It is killing people, it will continue to kill people. But not the people using the mobile phones, it's the people they drive into or the people they run down. It's a real bête noire of mine. I would seek to severely stiffen the penalties for that in an attempt to absolutely wipe it out. As I said before, it is going to have an impact on the town. There's no two ways about it, but it's inevitable, it's coming. Excuse me. I understand that an arrangement has been made, or an agreement has been reached with the contractors and the builders doing it, that a certain amount of local employment will be used. I can't quote percentages, I'm afraid. I'm not a numbers man, I'm a principles man. We need to minimise the effect, the negative impact it's going to have. It is going to take up a lot of space. It is going to destroy the skyline around Pentremila, and it will directly affect the people living there. We need to try and make this a positive thing. Move forward with the developers, the constructors, and afterwards with the prison service and the Home Office, so it's an ongoing, rolling forward thing. Basically, to involve the people in it, encompass them in the whole scenario of it, and improve it as we can to make their lives better, not worse. Right. Firstly, with the money we would save by stopping foreign aid like that, and also the rollout policy to withdraw Britain from the UK, we're going to make massive financial savings. A significant proportion of that will be invested in the NHS. It will be properly funded, properly sourced. We will put in place another 5,000 doctors. I think it was something like 8,000 nurses. They will be funded fully. We are the only party that can actually fund it without tax cuts, without spending cuts, without tax increases. UKIP can fund it as it is by saving money from Europe. Take it back a stage, strip out a lot of the unnecessary management. There is a vast amount of unnecessary management in the NHS. There is a vast amount of wastage in the NHS, and I mean vast amount. What we need to do is put control of the NHS back in the people who run it properly, the clinicians. Reinvest the power in them, fund nurses properly, increase adequate staffing levels so people can have time off for training, for whatever, make their roles more fulfilling and less stressful, because at the minute they're working themselves into the ground. Absenteeism and sickness rates in the NHS are spiralling because people are stressed and overworked. If you make their lives easier, put more staff on the wards where they're needed, more doctors, then it's going to make the whole situation an awful lot better and it will sort itself out. But the bottom line with the NHS is funding. As I said before, my views on fracking, personally, my views are that it's a natural resource we have that we can't afford to ignore. My colleague Nathan Gill was quoted the other week as saying, he made some comment about sticking a bunch of wind farms on a hill in North Wales. It was misconstrued by the press. What Nathan, I believe, was trying to say was that renewables are not the solution alone. They can make a significant contribution to the energy demands of the UK, but they will not, I don't personally think they will ever satisfy them entirely. Which leaves us with a number of options. We can either explore the nuclear route. A lot of people are very anti that. Wilver B is allegedly going to be built on Anglesey. It's subject to debate at the minute, I know, but I think, to be quite honest, it will probably happen. Or we can stick with the fossils. Now, we have fossil fuels, we know how to extract them, all the rest of it. What we can do is invest in their use to make it a lot cleaner and a lot more efficient, but we cannot afford to ignore a sitting resource like the shale gas that is within the UK. We just can't afford to ignore it. But it has to be done safely and with a minimum impact on the environment. I'm a complete newcomer to politics. I've never done anything before. I've never sat on committees. I'm not a former councillor, anything like that. But I am passionate about the things I believe in. I'm also a straightforward, no-nonsense, truth-telling person. If I have something to say, I will say it, and I will say it straight. I have a reputation for it, and it does tend to get me into trouble occasionally, as my wife will testify. But what you say from me, or what you get from me, is what you get. If you don't want to hear the answer to a question, then don't ask it. I believe passionately in Wrexham. I think it's a wonderful place. I'm very passionate about North Wales. I've chosen to make it my home. It's a place I love. I'm in the process of learning Welsh. I'm not very good at it, but I will get there eventually. And it's born of passion. I'm desperate for change, as everybody is. We've had enough of being ignored and being underrepresented. There is a political elite running this country who have done so for a long time. They're not interested in what's happening in North Wales. They're not interested in what's happening in the north of England. All they're interested in is what's happening in Westminster. Time for change. I want to force that change. I really do want to take it to them. I think it's great. Diversity breeds competition. You know, we have the Greens with their policies, some of which I completely agree with, others I'm not too keen on. Liberal Democrats are the same. The wider base you can get, the wider spectrum of viewpoints you can have, then the more informed the people of Wrexham can be as to who they want to choose. If they just stuck with the obligatory Labour Conservative, it's not much of a choice for them, really, is it? Because at the end of the day, there's not that much difference between the two parties' policies. Small areas, but nothing major, and they are of the same basic ethos. Where we have a broad base of candidates, particularly in Wrexham, as I said, the wider the level of choice, then the more informed the Wrexham electorate can become. I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. UKIP do not expect to have enough seats to form a government, not in this election. What we do hope to achieve is to have enough bums on seats in Westminster on the green leather to force change. There has been talk in the media about coalitions. No, it's not going to happen. But it would be in the interest of the British people that if UKIP have enough seats in Parliament that we can force the major party, whoever is in charge, be it Labour or Tories, to force change. So yes, I would hope to be in a position where I can use my influence to influence Westminster for the benefit of Wrexham in general, in particular, and North Wales in general. If you want to change, if you've had enough of the current political establishment, and I know an awful lot of people have, if you want a voice to be heard in Westminster on behalf of Wrexham, if you want a fully funded NHS service that's stripped down to the bare essentials and made efficient again for the benefit of the people, that will continue to be free at point of access, if you want education, doctors, health services, housing, etc., requirements to meet the needs of Wrexham, then don't vote for the current establishment, vote UKIP. If you want change, vote for me.